Hi, this is Josh Beiser from GameWisdom.com. I hope you enjoyed this Game Industry Insight, a look behind the scenes at game development. And be sure to subscribe and you can pitch future video topics. Oh boy, everybody. It was supposed to be a easy day for posting and making a critical thought, and then some crazy news broke out this week, especially last night. So if you didn't hear about it, following the reviews and the mixed impressions of the Mass Effect Andromeda, EA and BioWare have decided to put the series on hold for now, which is basically marketing speak to saying that there's not going to be a new Mass Effect game for a very long time. And then last night, breaking news happened early in the morning, that IO Interactive, the creators of the Hitman series, has been let go by Square Enix. What that means is Square Enix is no longer the publisher of IO Interactive, which means no more funding and no more assistance from them. And now they are looking to try and basically sell their ownership of IO Interactive to hopefully another publisher. So before we get started, if anyone from BioWare Montreal or IO Interactive are watching, I definitely wish you guys the best of luck. But this is sadly a really good time for today's industry insight to talk about the risks and pretty much the dark side of AAA development. If you want more of my thoughts, there will be a post link down below. But this is one of the things that from the consumer side, it's probably very surprising. Again, Mass Effect is easily one of BioWare's biggest titles and one of the biggest pop culture games of the last few years. It was also very surprising to find out that the last Mass Effect game came out in 2012. And man, again, my sense of time is completely off. And of course, the Hitman series has been a consistent earner on the PC side, with critical acclaim for the Hitman 2016. But of course, that raises the question, why are these two studios in big trouble right now? And that has to do with what we've talked about before and the dangers of AAA development, which, as a very funny coincidence, is what I was talking about in my live presentation the week before. But AAA development is very risky, and it has to do with basically the culture and how publishers operate. When it comes to, as we said before, the AAA versus the indie side of things, indie games typically are more unique, but lack the refinement of, again, graphical polish, bug squashing, stuff along those lines. While when we get a AAA game, we are expecting a very refined design, something that has been iterative on time and time again, but is probably built on pre-existing designs and systems. As we've said, you're not going to see a game like Gone Home or Stardew Valley or even something like The Darkest Dungeon come from a major studio. And the reason has to do with all the risk that's involved. And it really comes down to studio culture. When we look at most independent studios, they're usually ran by small teams. Again, I've seen one-man teams to a dozen and maybe somewhere in between. Typically, a AAA studio has employees in the high double digits and sometimes even in the hundreds if we're talking about massive studios or a game being worked on by multiple studios at the same time. But the point is that the overhead of running and managing these companies are far greater than your indie studio. It should go without saying, but a team of 5 working for a year is going to cost far less than a team of 75 working for that same period of time. And when you start throwing in marketing budgets and all that craziness that's involved at the AAA level, costs can balloon very quickly. And more importantly, it makes it a lot harder to get a return on investment. As we've talked about, when it comes to making a video game, and for those of you who are in the industry, this next part's going to be a major duh, but it has to be said. The issue is, when you're working on a game, you will not see 1 cent of profit until that game is on store shelves. Whether that game takes 6 months or 5 years to make, you are working without any profit or any money coming in. And this is why the importance of crowdfunding and, of course, the involvement of publishers providing development costs cannot be understated. However, when it comes to actually making money off of video games, this is actually going to be one of the many possible branch off topics that we can talk about tonight. But typically, when it comes to video game sales, the first 30 to about 45 days from the game's release is the key period. This is when the game is supposed to be making back the bulk of its money or the bulk of its revenue. Past this period, this is when we start getting to the area of game sales, the game's copy protection being cracked, and of course, more and more games coming out and pushing that game further and further off the store page. And publishers know this. This is why, when it comes to selling a game, especially at the AAA level, once your game's on the store shelves, basically a death clock starts counting down. If your game doesn't earn a serious amount of its revenue back within that period of time, you're going to have one very unhappy publisher. And when it comes to the AAA market, this is when things get very scary. Because of the costs and time associated with AAA projects, one failed game can usually be a studio closer. We've been joking about this for a while, or I guess some dark humor, but basically, a lot of us feel that Rockstar Studios is one horrible game away from being closed. And I know that sounds surprising. I mean, Rockstar, they made Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, Bully, and so on. But you have to understand the costs that's involved with that. When you have a game that's 3 to 5 years in development, plus getting licensing for music, hiring professional voice actors, and just like movie stars to do your voice acting, and of course all the man hours of designing this game, that goes up and up and up. And I remember, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I remember reading somewhere that Grand Theft Auto 5 cost, I think it was either $3 million or $5 million to develop. And that is insane amounts of money when you first think about it. However, this is why the AAA culture has been called into question, especially from developers like Cliff Bleszinski, hope I didn't butcher that too much, and how he feels it's not really sustainable. And I think we'll agree with him on that. And it has to do with basically the AAA machine and what it means to keep pumping out games. And sequelitis, that, my friends, is going to be another topic, because I know that one was suggested a while ago. But when it comes to the AAA industry, publishers love sequels because it allows them to work with an established fan base. They know that if Game 1 sold, let's say, 700,000 copies, and again, I'm just throwing these numbers out there, then they can reasonably assume that Game 2 will sell that around there. But a lot of publishers want more. And for those of you who are longtime fans of Game Wisdom, you know who we're about to mention. EA has become infamously known as the studio killer, being behind the closing and downsizing of companies like Maxis, Westwood Studios, EA Los Angeles, the developer that was hired to do Command & Conquer, also got closed. And of course, there are probably more than we can think of. The studio behind Dead Space was, of course, downsized and moved to another project. But the idea is, and there's this AAA mentality that each game in a series should get progressively more successful. If your first game sold 800,000 copies, your second game should sell maybe 1.2 million. And then we just keep throwing money in and expecting more and more profit. And this leads to the very infamous post or news piece that EA was banking on Dead Space 3 to earn, I think it was at least $3 million in revenue, or 3 million copies sold, or it wouldn't be considered a success. And think about that for a second. A survival horror game, one of the nichiest genres right now in the market, earning 3 million copies sold. And for you indie independent developers out there, I'm sure you are laughing your butts off at that piece of news. But this is a very big issue when it comes to the AAA machine, because it leaves no room for mild successes or even just good games. AAA publishers don't want a game that's critically reviewed and praised. They want a blockbuster sale. And we have seen many cases over the years of studios that have put out great games, universally praised, but didn't earn back enough to turn a profit, and the series, or sometimes even the studio, was closed. Sleeping Dogs, which now that I think it was another game published by Square Enix, also ran into this problem. And that takes us to Hitman. Now, the Hitman series, again, has been a niche series over the years, but it has carved itself its own unique place in the industry. And from what people have been saying, despite the praise of Hitman 2016, it did not earn anywhere what Square Enix was projecting. And as a double blow, the piece about them getting rid of IO Interactive came out on the same day that Square Enix reported a massive profit and big successes from Final Fantasy and Tomb Raider. Of course, I'm sure they didn't mention Hitman all that much there. But the issue from what we've been seeing is that when it came to Hitman 2016, one of the big things I think hurt in terms of market shares or market revenue was the fact that it became episodic. Like we said at the start, when it comes to big game sales or the biggest time for revenue, 30 to 45 days is just about there. And for you developers watching this, please let me know if that timetable has been changed at all, because that's what I thought I heard like a few years ago. But when it comes to a game like Hitman 2016 and being released over an entire year, it becomes a lot harder not only to project how much money you're going to make, but earn that money back. Because not only did we have the initial development costs, but then we had the post-release support. And again, when it comes to games as a service in that long-term development, typically the initial release should be big enough. It should earn enough money back that the publisher feels confident in keeping things going. You don't want to support a game that did horrible on its first 30 days with a year to 2 years worth of content. But this is where things get very, unfortunately, depressing. Because we have, on one hand, a series like Mass Effect that, again, I'm sure all of you watching this have heard of, now being put on the back burner, and who knows when we'll see another one. And then we have Hitman, which, again, everyone who's talked about that game has really enjoyed it, and now the future of IO Interactive is at stake. And there's also another part about this. Unfortunately, we don't know this, not being privy to the details, but does IO Interactive own the Hitman IP? Because we could have a case where they may get picked up by another publisher, but Square Enix may keep the copyright for Hitman, or they may want too much for that IP and the deal goes south. Because we have seen cases like that where a smaller third-party developer is trying to get bought, but because they can't provide the IP that they're known for, that the deal falls through. And unfortunately, at this point, we don't know the greater details. But when it comes to the AAA side of things, this is where things get very hard to talk about. Because something has to give. We've been talking about this for the last decade now, but game pricing and development should be lowering with more of a move to digital and less reliance on retail stores. Game prices and, in response, game development should be going down. But we are not seeing that happen. And here's a question for you folks. With, of course, the announcements or with the plans behind the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Scorpio keeping this development cycle going longer, I'm just wondering if this will kind of help things. Like, do you think we will see pricing and development costs go down because people are working on these consoles longer? Or do you think this won't do a damn thing? But when it comes to the AAA side of things, like I said, something eventually has to give. The dam has to break somewhere. Either publishers have to be more willing to be happy with minor successes, or AAA developers are just going to get, work to the point of, danger levels of stress and whatnot. But we've been talking again about this for a while, and it seems like nothing is happening on this front. There's still discussions about whether or not developers, or there should be a game industry union. And my goodness, that is another topic in of itself. But with that said, we're going to wrap it up here. Again, when it comes to the AAA side of things, there are no small winners. There are either amazing successes, or your game is failing. And the sad part is, failure can still mean getting a 75 average on Metacritic, or in some cases, even maybe winning Game of the Year awards. You just never know. And unfortunately, with publishers trying to, bet the house on these massive releases, it's becoming very much do or die for a lot of studios. And it feels like for some of the bigger names that they're all just one big failure away from being closed. And that's really not how it should be. When I spoke with Jake Burkett from Gray Alien Games about sustainability, he talked about the importance of managing a budget and managing what you can do within that time frame. And he knows, after being in the industry in the indie side for over 15 years, not to put all your eggs in one basket. It's better, or it's safer, I should say, to work on 3 games over the course of 6 years rather than just spending, all those budgets combined on one single title. Because again, if your game fails, what's your backup plan? This is why on the independent side that a common practice or a common adage is to fail small. Because if the game that you only spent 6 months working on doesn't do much in the market, you're going to be out money, but you will be out significantly less than a game that just spent 6 years being developed with a studio of 100 employees and, of course, a marketing budget that probably has a Super Bowl commercial put in as well. But with that said, we're going to end things here. Thank you so much for watching today's Industry Insight. What do you think about these big news from IO Interactive and BioWare Montreal? Let me know in the comments below. But check back daily for more great discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom. And if you're new, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for vlog topics, be it critical thoughts or industry insights, definitely let me know in the comments. But until next time, have a great night. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBicer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBicer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.